Attention bowlers, we are going to get started. Welcome back to Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire for another thrilling Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour match. I'm Steve Kelly on the call. This is Chris Salmons versus Bryan Hebert. The match format is 5 strings and 14 points up for grabs. 2 points for string, 4 for total pinfall with ties splitting points. And that's Chris Salmons starting out with a split right out with a single, not a single pin drop, a 6 drop, whatever. It's a spare for Chris Salmons. What an introduction by Chris Salmons. Anyways, it's good as always to have you along with us. This match was live streamed on Monday, December 23rd, and it's available for rewatching at any time upon the conclusion of this match here in 2024. For those interested, I would like to highlight a few things. First, this broadcast should have subtitles and live captioning enabled, so if you enjoy this feature, please feel free to enable it in the controls below. If you're watching this broadcast on YouTube, the transcript feature will likely also be available. And that's Chris Salmons. He was not on the head pin for his spare fill, but he's got a nice 4 fill out of it. The second ball wasn't a mark, but he's left with 3 on the deck. The 8, the 9, and the 4, and he will clean up for a 9 box. After all is said and done for Chris Salmons, that puts Chris Salmons at 23 after 2 here on lane 4 at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. So folks, throughout the match, I'll describe the play-by-play action and provide up to the minute scoring to the best of my ability. Keep an eye on the unofficial scoreboard on your screen. It's here for the benefit of the broadcast, while the bowlers maintain their official book records separately. Scores may be subject to review or correction. It's a headpin shot and a split for Chris Salmons. That's the 2, the 7, and the 8. And that's another spare for Chris Salmons, the second off the match. That's 33 after 3 for Mr. Salmons. Chris Salmons fishing out the marks so far. Let's talk about Chris Salmons a bit. He has a season record of 48 and 50 with 7 matches played. At home, he's 22 and 20 at Riverwalk Lanes in Amesbury, Massachusetts this season. He's bowled 3 matches at home. That's a 5 fill for Chris Salmons. And that's him, Chris Salmons on the single pin, 5-pin spare. Opportunity. Chris Salmons fires. He's just a little bit off to the left of the 5. No spare for Chris Salmons. And he'll miss it twice for a 9 box. 47 after 4 for Mr. Salmons. Chris Salmons, when he's away, is 26 and 30 with 4 matches played. Season average of 98.95. At home, he's 101.8. Away, 96.1. And that's Chris Salmons not on the head pin. Drops 8. It's the 1 and the 3 on the deck. And on the 3 and not on the 1 for the spare shot, Chris Salmons is looking at a single pin shot for a 10 box. Chris Salmons, he fires, he's off to the right. That's a 9 box for Mr. Salmons, 56 after 5 for Chris Salmons. That's the end of the half for Mr. Salmons, 56 after 5. To start out with 2 spares. The fills were 4 and 5, so bit of a opportunity there for Chris Salmons. But anyways, Bryan Hebert will continue, or start out at least, on lane 4. And what a start that is. He lemon drops on the 6 pin. And Bryan Hebert punches out another. There we go. Sorry about that. That was a 6 box for Bryan Hebert. Bryan Hebert's on the head pin that time. 7 drop. It's a left side triangle, the 4-5-2. And Bryan Hebert is just off just a little bit. But he'll pin it out for 10 box. So Bryan Hebert, that's 16 after 2, after that 10 box. Talking about Bryan Hebert. He has a season record of 30-68 after 7 matches played. At home, he's 14-14 with 2 matches played. And when he's away, he's got a bit of a harder record at the moment of 16-54 with 5 matches played. Hebert punching pins out here, looking to get a 10 box, but he'll take an 8, get to 24 after 3 for Mr. Bryan Hebert. Bryan Hebert's off to the right of the head pin. It is the 4 horsemen left side and the 9 on the deck. Hebert's off to the right, just a little bit past the 9 pin. No mark. And that was a pretty third ball. He was a little bit too full, though, in the 1-2 pocket. That's a 9 box for Bryan Hebert, putting him at 33 after 4. We compare that to Chris Salmons' 47 after 4. And Hebert to the left of the head pin. He's dropping 5. 1, 3, 6, 9, and 4 are on the deck. Hebert's a little bit off to the right. Same pins on the deck. 1, 3, 6, 4, 9. The 1-3 pocket is the operative pocket for this. And Hebert will connect just a little bit towards the right of center. He'll leave 3 on the deck for a 7 box. That will put him at 40 after 5 for Bryan Hebert. 40 after 5 for Bryan Hebert. No marks in the first half of the first game versus 56 after 5 for Chris Salmons. And we'll say hello to Chris Salmons once again. He's over on lane 3 this time. He's on the head pin, and that's a 9 drop for Chris Salmons. Five pin for a spare shot. And he fires, and he'll take the spare. For Salmons with his 3rd mark of the game, 66 after 6, plus a bonus ball. Salmons on the bonus. That's a 5 fill. With a remedial shot, he leaves the 1 and the 7 on the deck. And he'll take that out for a 10 box. That's 81 after 7 for Chris Salmons. And Salmons fires to the right of the head pin. It's the 1, 2, 7, 10 on the deck. Let's see what he could do with this shot. Salmons fires, sees the left. A little bit too much left, leaves the 1, the 2, and the 10 on the deck. On lane 3 at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire, he's on the 1, the 2, and leaves the 10. That's a 9 box for Mr. Salmons. That's 90 after 8. I believe, actually I might have a score correction to announce. Let you know where I made the mistake in just a moment. Again, I'm following the bowlers. Correction, he's at 93 after 8. Chris Salmons was on the head pin, dropping 9 and then missing the spare. That'll be a 10 box for Chris Salmons, putting him at 103 after 9. My apologies on the score corrections there. Again, I follow the bowlers, so I'm keeping an eye on their electronic scoreboard down there, and I'm just staying in sync with it back here. Every once in a while, there are desyncs, and that's just the nature of candlepin bowling. It's a lot of scoring. And Chris Salmons is off to the right of the head pin. That's a left side Cleary, I believe. The 4-horseman left side and the 9. Actually, it might not be a Cleary, but hey, you know. And he punches the head pin a little bit too full. Leaves 4 on the deck. That's an 8 box for Chris Salmons. That will put him at 111 after 5. 111 after 5 for Chris Salmons is where we are at. Ended up being 3 marks. Spare 4, spare 9, and spare 5 was what carried Mr. Salmons to that 111. Bryan Hebert now. Had been shot. He's just a little bit off. Actually, it's not a head pin shot. He just took everything out at the head pin. Hebert takes a 9 for 49 in 6. That is confirmed. And that's Hebert with a 9 drop, a late falling 9 drop. On the head pin that time. Single pin spare opportunity, and he just misses the 7 just to the left. And that will be a miss the second, get the third situation. It's a 10 box for Bryan Hebert. That's 59 after 7. Eight drop. And a split. 310 for Bryan Hebert. And that goes. That's a spare right there for Bryan Hebert. Just his first spare of the match. 69 and a fill after 8 for Mr. Bryan Hebert. And Hebert's a little bit too full on the head pin. He drops 5. He's at 74. And he's a little off the 2 pin to the right, leaves the 4-6, 2-7, 10. And a 5 box it will be. So it's 10. It's a 15 and 8, and then 5 in the 9th for 79 and 5 for Bryan Hebert, with 1 to go. Bryan Hebert has a season average of 93.95, home average 91.7, away average 96.2, high single 112, high series 494. Hebert drops 8. And he'll punch 1, leave 1, leaving the 3 on the deck. And that will be a 9 box for Bryan Hebert to finish off with 88. 88 after 1 game for Bryan Hebert, so he'll cede 2 points to Chris Salmons' 111 in the first game. But we still have plenty of bowling to go here on the tour, on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, broadcasting from Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire today. Let's say hello to Chris Salmons on lane 4 with a head pin drop. He's left with the 6 and the 10 on the deck. That'll be a 9 for Chris Salmons in the first. Chris Salmons drops 8 once again. It's the 6 and the 10. Looks kind of familiar, huh? Chris Salmons he'll foul it off the 10 pin, so that's going to be a -1, whatever it ends up being. When you go into the gutter and you pop out, those pins do not count. Fun facts. So that's going to be a 9 box for Chris Salmons. 18 after 2. So Chris Salmons' high single is 125 and his high series is 560. He has 8 strikes, 60 spares, and 67 tens with a perfect box percentage of 39%. That's a split for Chris Salmons. He's on the head pin but drops 5. Salmons fires on the object pin. Look at that awesome spare by Chris Salmons. Right on the object, 3-6. Kind of causes a mini explosion down there. There's a lot of fast action at Lakeside if you can hit your targets. It's just, Lakeside can be a little bit of a difficult house in just finding those targets. You need to be really precise compared to other houses. And that is a strike on spare for Chris Salmons. Right when he needed it. Puts him at 48 after 4. And he's not done yet, folks. He's got 1 box to go here in the second. So Chris Salmons with a powerful strike on spare to light up his game. First half of the second game. Chris Salmons to the right of the head pin this time. He drops 5 so far. Not on the head pin. And he's right, well, he was on the object pin, but he was kind of on the wrong side of it. He takes all out but the 8 pin on the deck. Salmons fires for the 10 box, and he'll take a 10. So that was a 9 fill and a 10 box. That should put him at 67 after 5, and that is what I see down there. So that's 67 after 5 for Chris Salmons. Now we'll say hello to Bryan Hebert. Starting immediately. Bryan Hebert drops 5, not on the head pin, and he takes out nearly everything but leaves the 7. And Hebert will clean up for a 10 box to start out, pinning it outside after 1. Bryan Hebert has 7 strikes, 47 spares, and 65 tens on the season with a perfect box percentage of 34%. 3284 seasonal total pins. He is 5th in E-North Division 2, just 1 place below Salmons, and he's 8th place in the wild card, at least as of before the match with Todd Holbrook. I unofficially calculated those stats, so we'll see if those hold true after the next stat drop from Micah Imperato. So Hebert dropped 8, leaving the 1 and the 7. He connects with the 7 and leaves only the 1, so he's shooting for a 10 box now with a 9 box guarantee. And a 9 box it will be for Bryan Hebert. He's at 19 after 2. Bryan Hebert so far has 5 head pin shots. Compare that to Chris Salmons' 9. Bryan Hebert is 3 boxes behind Chris Salmons, bear in mind, in terms of that stat. But Hebert fires to the left of the head pin, takes a few pins out. It is the 1, the 5, the 3, the 6, the 8, and the 9 on the deck. So Hebert looks to shoot at a pile of pins in the center. He connects with the 6, kicks over to the left, and leaves 4 on the deck. And he'll take 2 and leave 2. That'll be an 8 box for Bryan Hebert. 27 after 3 for Bryan Hebert. He finished the first game with an 88. Chris Salmons finished the first game with a 111. Bryan Hebert, 38% of the head pin so far, 15% splits. Chris Salmons, 60% of the head pin with 20% splits. And Hebert got some nice action despite not reaching the head pin there. But he drops 7. That's the 1, the 8, and the 9 on the deck. There's a lot of wood down there, so I think that has potential to go. We'll see what Bryan Hebert can do. And he connects with the head pin and connects with the 9 pin, but a little bit too straight on. Leaves the 7 pin down there on the deck. Hebert for the 10 box. Won't connect with it, but it's still a 9 box regardless. 36 after 4 for Bryan Hebert. Bryan Hebert connects with the 10 pin and not much else. Right side, the extreme Arctic corner of the candlepin corner, I guess we might call that. So Bryan Hebert, remedial second ball. Comes a game of 9 pin. He's the right of the head pin, leaves everything but the 1, the 2, and the 7 on the deck. For a 10 box. And Bryan Hebert will take 9, leaving the 2 on the deck. So after all said and done, Bryan Hebert's at 45 after 5, and Chris Salmons at 67 after 5. 1.5 game total of 133 for Bryan Hebert, down by Chris Salmons' 1.5 game total of 178. And Chris Salmons will open up first with a 9 drop on the head pin. And that will be a spare for Chris Salmons. Nice little quiet spare. Sometimes those are a little bit easier to get. My apologies, I'm just trying to get Bryan Hebert's score tower in order here. There we go, that should fix it for now. It was a 7 fill for Chris Salmons. And a 10 box for 94 and 7 for Mr. Chris Salmons. Chris Salmons drops 6. That's the 1, the 3, the 7, and the 9. For a spare shot, spare opportunity. And he's on it, but he leaves the 9. The sleepers can be rather difficult to get at Lakeside lanes, quite admittedly. Been there plenty of times. It's a 10 box for Chris Salmons. He's at 104 and 8. That is confirmed. Chris Salmons, 56% on the head pin so far with 10 head pin shots. And there's another one right there. The 7 drop and the split. So it's the 4-6-7 for Chris Salmons. And he's a little bit too much to the left of the 4. I know what he wanted to do. He wanted to do a cut shot. He connects with the 7. He's left with the goalpost, the 4 and the 6. Piece of wood in between the 4 and the 6. Playing the wood was probably the best bet, just like that. And that's how you get a 10 box. His third 10 box in a row in the second half. 114. Chris Salmons has been perfect aside from the first two boxes. 114 and 9. Chris Salmons has 3,448 seasonal total pins. He's fourth in North Division 1 in Division 2. That is one place above Bryan Hebert. He is sixth place in the overall wild card for Class E North. And Salmon's trying to connect with a spare. Leaves the 7. Can't quite do it. And Salmons for the 10 box. He'll take a 10. That's a lot of 10s for 124 for Chris Salmons in the second game. 2-game total of 235 for Mr. Chris Salmons with 1 strike and 5 spares. It's an impressive headpin percentage as well. 11 for 20, 55% with only 4 splits, totaling 44 bonus pins, averaging 7.3 per mark. We'll now see what Bryan Hebert can do here. Hebert with a thunderous 9 drop at the beginning. For the spare shot. Oh, and he just misses it by just a little bit. That's the 3 pin down there. I know he really wanted that one, but it just didn't go. So Hebert will leave a mark on the table for a 9 box for 54 after 6. Hebert 1 spare, no strikes so far. Salmons has been on a tear of spares. And Hebert's on the head pin that time. Will be a strike, and it will be a strike. There's the mark he was looking for. 64 after 7 for Bryan Hebert plus a fill. Sometimes it only takes 1 good mark to kind of get the confidence back. It's like how a quarterback just needs 1 good touchdown. So Hebert will go off to the right, take 3 pins or so for the first ball. Second ball is the one that counts, though. And it will be a 7 fill after all is said and done for Bryan Hebert on the strike. For the 10 box, he'll take 8. That's 79 after 8 for Bryan Hebert. Bryan Hebert has the 16th highest class average at 93.95. He has the number 6 class average strike fill at 8.43. And that is a lemon drop for Bryan Hebert on the 6 pin. Lemon drop is when you punch out the 4 or the 6 pin on the first ball. That's a $1 donation to Candlepins for Cancer for every occurrence. And Hebert takes a few more out. Leaves 5 on the deck, and that's going to be, unfortunately, a 5 box for Bryan Hebert. 84 after 9 for Hebert. Bryan's to the right of the head pin and takes a couple pins out, washes out a few. And Hebert on the trying to go for the head pin, but he leaves the 1, the 7, and the 10 on the deck. Some might call that the high-low jack. And Hebert will take a 7 with that. That's going to be a 91 second game for Bryan Hebert. So 2-game total, 179 for Bryan Hebert, down by 56 in the total to Chris Salmons' 235 2-game total. So far, Chris Salmons has 4 points. Still plenty of bowling here to go, folks. I'll say hello once again to our way bowler, Chris Salmons, on lane 4 at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. And he starts out strong with a 7 drop, 8 drop, late falling additional pin. But it's still a split for Chris Salmons after all is said and done. But he will take it for a spare, though. And on the fill, he'll take a 4. Not quite on the head pin. And he leaves the 1, the 2, the 6, the 7, the 8, and the 10 on the deck. And that will be an 8 box for Chris Salmons. Chris Salmons with 12 headpin shots and 5 splits so far. Chris Salmons on the headpin with a strike. That's a hammer strike for Chris Salmons. Talk a little about Chris Salmons. He is currently 6th place in the wild card, 48 and 50 on the season with a 98.5 average. Season high single 125, high series 560 with 8 strikes, 60 spares, and 67 tens. Again, 39% perfect box percentage and 34-48 seasonal total pins with 7 matches played. You just missed Chris Salmons bowling a strike in case you just tuned in, and he's off the left of the head pin and he drops 8. It's some nice spin action there so far. It's an 8 drop on the 1-3 pocket, which are the only 2 pins remaining. Chris Salmons fires on the 1-3 pocket. He's just off to the right. And Salmons will take 1 and leave 1 for a 9 box. And an 8 fill on his strike for what it's worth. Puts him at 49 after 4. Both bowlers with strikes on the board. And Chris Salmons almost with another. Drops 9, leaves the 5 pin on the deck. Chris Salmons is starting to find his center on finding the head pin. And he'll take the single pin spare for a spare. 59 and a bonus after 5 for Chris Salmons. 3 marks in 1/2 in the third game. The first half of the third game. 2.5 game total of 294 for Chris Salmons. And I'll say hello to Bryan Hebert on lane 4. And he'll take an early spare. So Bryan Hebert looking to respond here after a thunderous first half from Chris Salmons. Hebert filling a spare. It has to be big. He's on the head pin. He's found the head pin there. That's an 8 drop for Bryan Hebert. It is a split, though. It's the 5 and the 7, the left side setback. With Wood to assist, and he almost gets the sidewall pinball action, but he can't quite get the ricochet that he was looking for. Hebert for the 10 box. He'll take a 10. 28 after 2 for Bryan Hebert. One strike, 2 spares for Bryan Hebert so far this match. Hebert's found the head pin there, but he's left with a banana split. And he mumbles, "I hate this shot," and I really honestly can't fault him for that. Banana split is the 4, 6, 7, 10 leave. You have to pick one side and hope it takes the second one. So he grabs 2, leaves 2. It's about the best he could do. But he'll very nicely clean it up for 10. Bryan is perfect so far. 38 after 3 for Bryan Hebert. 2 for 3 on the head pin so far. Hebert on lane 4. To the left of the head pin, drops 6, drops 7. It's the 1-3-10. And there it goes. There was the 1-3-10 for Bryan Hebert. 48 and a fill after 4. For Mr. Bryan Hebert. Bryan Hebert's taken 24 points in his past 5 matches, averaging 4.8 per match. And on that spare fill, that's a 3. Wasn't on the head pin there. Just a little bit off to the right of the head pin, leaves the 1, the 5, the 3, the 7, and the 9 on the deck. For a 10 box, 5 box minimum for Bryan Hebert. Pins are still mixing. It's going to be a 9 box for Bryan Hebert. That's 60 after 5 for Bryan Hebert. Rose to the occasion to Chris Salmons' 59 and a fill after 5. Definitely keeping the damage minimal there. It's Chris Salmons on lane 3 at Lakeside Lanes. As he takes a moment just to assess the situation on the scoreboard. Things seem okay. It's a 9 drop for Chris Salmons. Chris Salmons with a 9 fill spare, and then filling that spare with 7. And for the trying to get the 3-peat, he can't quite do it. He leaves the 7 on the deck. So Chris Salmons is at 94 after 7, after all said and done. On the head pin, he drops 7 that time. It's the 5-6-10. Not really a lot of helpful wood. Maybe the one in the gutter if you can cap it on the legal side of it. But it's risky. Might be one of those balls where you might just want to just grab sticks. That's what Chris Salmons agreed upon. He went for the 5, took only the 5, leaves the 6 and the 10. And on the 6 and the 10, he'll pin it out for a 10 box. Chris Salmons is at 104 in 8 with 2 to go. Chris Salmons currently at 339 in the total. Really impressive total so far. I estimate he could probably get to around 350 or so, which is a pretty dang good total for Chris Salmons, considering his season average is 98.95. When he's away, his average is 96.1. Chris Salmons has the 9th highest Class E average at 98.95. Number 8 Class High Single, 125. The 3rd Class High Series at 560. The 10th Class Total Spares at 60 for Class E North. 7th Class Perfect Box Percentage at 39. And number 10 Class Total Tens at 67 for Class E North. It's a lemon drop for Chris Salmons on the 6 pin. Salmons fires hard on the head pin and almost takes everything out. He leaves the 7 on the deck. For Salmons, 16 head pin shots, 55% today, 6 splits, 72 in total fills. And Chris will leave the 7 on the deck for 113 after 9 with 1 to go. Chris Salmons has been averaging 7.2 fills per mark. Salmons' final first ball of the third game. And he fires. That was an interesting head pinch shot. Look at that. Interesting, like 2, 5, 7, 9, 10. What a weird array of pins. That was a head pinch shot. I got a shot like this yesterday when I was rolling off at Lakeside Lanes, and it's just bizarre, let me tell you. Chris Salmons fires on that interesting array of pins. He's left with a 2, 7, 10. It's about the best he could have done with that one, really. 2, 7, 10 for a 10 box. It's going to be a 7 for Chris Salmons. 120, third game. And a 355 three-game total for Chris Salmons. 2 strikes, 8 spares, 17 headpin shots, 7 splits. And that is what it's going to be for Chris Salmons. Bryan Hebert, meanwhile, starting out on lane 3. It's a 6 drop, not on the headpin. And no follow-up spare. He's left with a 1 on the 8. And Hebert will take an 8 box to start out. 68 after 6 for Bryan Hebert. Take a look at Bryan Hebert's stats. Again, he's currently 8th in the wild card, but that's my manual calculation. Unofficial at the moment. Season average of 94.6. I'll show you that slide again in just a moment. He's off to the left of the head pin. Takes 3 on the left side, a candlepin corner. And he'll take a few more out, but still leave a fair amount of pins on the deck. And Hebert will clean up for a 7 box, putting him at 75 after 7. Bryan Hebert, 34% perfect box percentage, 7 strikes, 47 spares, and 65 tens on the season. He's on the head pin there with a 7 drop. That's the right side triangle. That's the 9, 10, 6 for Bryan Hebert. He's thinking long and hard about it. And he'll just narrowly miss the 9. He plays the 6 and the 10, and the debris just curls around the 9 and doesn't touch it. So that's a 10 box for Bryan Hebert. 85 and 8. Compare that to Chris Salmons' 104 and 8 at the same point in the match. Needs a few marks just to catch up. Particularly spares is where Bryan Hebert can catch up to Chris Salmons at in terms of raw numbers. That's an 8 drop for Bryan Hebert. Not on the head pin, but leaves the 1 and the 3 on the deck. On the 1-3. Connects with the 3, leaves the 1. So no mark for Hebert. This is for a 10 box. He'll play the wood to take the 10. It's 95 after 9 for Bryan Hebert with 1 to go. A triple strike will get him to 125. So that's unfortunately the benchmark that he has to reach. And he's on the head pin. I thought that was going to be a hammer, to be perfectly honest with you. But he leaves the 2 and the 7 on the deck. And he just sails to the left of the 2 in between the void between the 2 and the 7. Hebert on the cleanup. And he misses off to the right this time for an 8 box. He's going to finish with a 103 for a 3-game total of 282 for Bryan Hebert. 3-game total of 5. So currently Chris Salmons shooting the moon in terms of the points. 6-2, Bryan's none. 355 to 282. Chris Salmons in the total in the driver's seat by 73 and took the third game by 17. That is currently your score update on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. Say hello to Chris Salmons on lane 4 on the right pair. Once again, he starts out. He's to the left of the headpin. He drops 6. So no mark for Chris Salmons. He's on the 7 pin. For a 10 box, he'll take that 10. That will put him at 10 after 1. Chris Salmons in his past 5 matches has taken 22 points, averaging 4.4 per match. Most recently, in a recent match, he faced Mark Milliken in round 4 at Portsmouth, an away game with a 448 series. He took, unfortunately, no points. 0 strikes, 4 spares, and 7 tens with an 83, 105, 90, 83, and 87. And Salmons will take the 2 out and leave the 1, the 5, the 7, the 8, and the 9 on the deck. Still working things out down there. Last time versus Bryan Hebert last season on October 22nd, 2023, Chris Salmons went 496 to Hebert's 458 with a difference of 38. With a 94, 101, 103, 96, and 102 at Academy Lanes in the Red Room. It's a 6 box for Chris Salmons, a rough 6 box for 16 after 2. And Salmons is just off to the left of the headpin. Down there, it's the 7, 10, 5, 6, 1, 3, 9. And he just misses the object pin to the left by just a little bit. Salmons for the 10 box. Leaves all but the head pin for a 9. 25 after 3 for Chris Salmons. Last year, Chris Salmons' home alley was Academy Lanes in Haverhill, Massachusetts. This year, it's Riverwalk Lanes in Amesbury, Massachusetts. Chris Salmons generally averages 16.7 for 50 on the head pin and 7.3 splits per match. That's a 9 drop for Chris Salmons. 7 pin on the deck. And that's going to be a 9 box for Chris Salmons as it went into the gutter. 34 after 4. And Salmons to the right of the head pin gets a splash of 5. Left side cleary, 1, 2, 4, 7, 8. And Chris Salmons just misses the head pin, takes everything else out. It's just Chris Salmons versus the head pin. The head pin goes. That's a 10 box. Chris Salmons markless in this half. For 44 after 5 for Chris Salmons. So Hebert punches the center for a split, spread eagle minus the 2. Take the 6 and the 10 and leave the 3, the 4, and the 7 on the deck. That'll be an 8 after 1 for Hebert. And here's the current standings at the moment. Again, somewhat unofficial because Hebert's match against Todd Holbrook may not have been reflected just yet, but he's not too far off of Chris Salmons. He's currently 8th place to Chris Salmons' 6, with Paul Kravitz in the center. And Hebert on the 5, 6, 10. For a spare shot. I know what he wanted to do there. He wanted to play the wood, but the wood wasn't quite lined up in the right spot, I don't think. So unfortunately, the 5-6-10 now stay. Oh, and almost gets the sidewall to get the 5, but it'll take a 9 box. A nice out. Takes the 3 and the 6, leaving the 5. There's 17 after 2 for Bryan Hebert. Bryan Hebert again with a record of 30 and 68. The past 5 matches, he's had 4 strikes, 33 spares, 50 tens, 23-46 total pinfall in his past 5 matches, averaging 469.2 per match. 6 drop for Hebert there, not in the head pin. Plays the object pin a little light, leaves the 3 and the 9 on the deck. And Hebert will take a 9 for 26 after 3. Here's the division standings. So Salmons and Hebert are in the same division, E North Division 2. For Salmons is currently 4th, and Hebert is 5th. Again, with some manual edits I applied there just because his match with Todd Holbrook wasn't quite applied just yet. So those are as updated numbers as I could possibly apply at the moment. That's Hebert with a 5 drop, leaving the hay bale on the right side. Hebert placed the bale to the left, but will the 6 pin come towards the 3? It will not. Hebert for the 10, it's going to be an 8. Leaves the 3 and the 6 on the deck. 34 after 4. Our bowlers are tied in this game. One strike for Hebert, 2 strikes for Salmons. The difference is in the spares. Hebert's 3 to Salmons' 8. Hebert drops 5. That's the left side 4 horsemen and the 9 on the deck. And for the spare shot, Hebert is just off to the right. For the remedial second ball, he'll take the 9 and leave 4 on the deck for a 6 box. So that's 40 after 4 for Bryan Hebert. Versus Chris Salmons is 40 after 5 for Bryan Hebert versus Chris Salmons is 44 after 5, 399 to 322. Chris Salmons in the lead by 4 in the game and 77 in the total. Salmons with a light hit on the head pin. Salmons takes 9 and the 6 for 53. So again, here's where they are in the division. These 2 bowlers are fairly close, so leapfrogging one another is definitely possible in this game based on a couple of point differentials. It's Chris Salmons on the head pin dropping 8, leaving the 2 and the 8. Sleeper shot. Salmons on the 2 and the 8, and he'll play it full and he'll take a spare. 63 after 7 and a bonus for Chris Salmons. Salmons on the 1-3 pocket. He'll take a 6 on his spare. Left side check mark. 4-5-2-7. And he'll play that and he'll almost get it, but he'll leave the 5 on the deck. And 9 box it will be for Chris Salmons, 78 after 8. And just showing you some superlatives here. Chris Salmons is all over the map in terms of the superlatives all over the place. High series, total spares, high singles, average strike fill, and a whole bunch of others. We'll talk about more of that in just a little bit. Salmons with another head pin shot. Left for the left side bail. 4-5-2-7-8. Salmons is just off to the right. So no mark for Chris Salmons. Second ball, he leaves all but 2 for an 8 box. That puts him at 86 after 9. With 1 to go, he's at 441 in the match so far. It's a 6 drop for Salmons. He leaves the 4 horsemen right side, 1, 3, 6, 10. And he leaves the single pin, head pin, on the second ball. No mark for Chris Salmons. That'll be a 10 box. And a 96 fourth game for Chris Salmons. For a 4-game total of 451 for Mr. Salmons. 2 strikes, 9 spares, and a 53% head pin percentage. Say hello to Bryan Hebert now. Not in the head pin, drops 6. And takes 1 more out, leaves the 1, the 3, and the 7 on the deck. Hebert will punch 1 more out for an 8. 48 after 6 for Bryan Hebert. Bryan Hebert has 13 head pin shots today, 36%, and 7 splits. Hebert on the 1-2 pocket leaves the 5 and the 3 on the deck. Hebert plays the wood to the left of the 5 and leaves the 3. Piece of wood just skates by the 3. Lightly taps it. Hebert will take a 9 box for 57 and 7. Hebert with 23 in total fills, averaging 5.8 per mark. He's off to the right. Takes the 6 and the 10. Hebert almost converts it for a spare, but leaves the 4 on the deck. So he's shooting for a 10 box now. We'll take a 9 for 66 and 8. And Hebert on the head. Heading for the head pin, but veers off to the right. Similar ball to last time, a right side candlepin corner. And Hebert's to left the head pin, leaves the 1 and the 3 on the deck this time. Wasn't on the object pin. And he will take a 9. For 75 and 9. A mark and a decent fill can get him to 96 or higher. That's a 7 drop for Hebert, the 1, the 3, and the 6. For the spare, he punches a little bit too hard, and the head pin leaves the 3 and the 6. Look good on paper, just punched a little bit too full. And that will be an 8 box for Hebert. 83 fourth game, and a 4-game total of 365 for Bryan Hebert. Chris Salmons takes game 4 by 13, 96-83, and has a total by 86, 451 to Bryan Hebert's 365. With 1 game to go before we end this match, game 5. It's the last chance to take grand total pinfall. It's Chris Salmons with a split. Oops. It's the 2-4-10. Takes the 4, leaves the 2 and the 10. That'll be an 8-box for Salmons to start out. Salmons on the head pin with a 7 drop and a 7 fill. 5, 6, 10 on the deck. And he leaves the 6-10. We'll clean it up for a 10-box for 18 after 2. Salmons' first pitch of the 3rd ball is a little bit off to the right. Second ball, he leaves the 4 and the 7 on the deck. And to finish off, it'll be an 8-box for 26 after 3 for Chris Salmons. Chris Salmons has past 5 matches. He's taken 2 strikes, 38 spares, 49 tens, 23-88 total pinfall, averaging 477.6 per match. 3 out of 7 matches with double-digit wins. 1 out of 7 matches with shutout victories. 3 games in a row at or over 100. Longest winning streak is 3, 7 points or greater. One, 2, 4, 7, 10 for Chris Salmons down there in lane 4. He'll take 1 out, and that's a 6-box. 32 after 4. Salmons has 2 strikes, 9 spares. Hebert has 1 strike, 3 spares. Salmons on the head pin with a symmetrical splash going airborne. Drops 8, leaving the 4 and the 8 on the deck. It's just Chris Salmons versus the 4 and the 8 before he sits here. He'll just narrowly miss to the left. That's going to be an 8-box. Chris Salmons are marking he's just tired. That's 40 after 5 for Chris Salmons. 40 after 5 for Salmons, 491, 4.5 game total. We're now saying hello to Bryan Hebert. Hebert opening up with a right side half Worcester and an extra pin. Second ball is on the object pin, leaves everything but the 6. For the 10 box, he'll get a 9. 9 after 1 for Ryan Hebert. Bryan Hebert recently faced Todd Holbrook in round 9. He had a 444 series with a 91, 88, 101, 87, and 77. 0 strikes, 4 spares, 13 tens. He went 19 for 50 on the head pin with 12 splits. Unfortunately, he couldn't get any points out of Todd Holbrook. Hebert shooting for a 10 box on the 139. He'll take the 3, leaving the 1 and the 9 for an 8 box. 17 after 2 for Ryan Hebert. Compare that to 18 after 2 for Chris Salmons. Hebert's the right of the head pin, but drops 7, leaves the 1, the 2, and the 8 on the deck. And he's just off the head pin, leaving the head pin. Takes the 2 and the 8 and leaves the 1. And that will be a 9 box for Bryan Hebert, 26 after 3. And Hebert's off the left, the head pin dropping 6. That's the 1-3-6-8 down there on lane 4 at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Hebert connects with the 3 and the 6 and leaves the 1 and the 8 on the deck. That's an 8 box for Bryan Hebert. That's 34 after 4. And here's the averages. So Chris Salmons is a little ahead of Bryan Hebert in terms of the averages. I'll show you that slide in just a second. Left side lemon drop for Bryan Hebert on the 4 pin. Real quick, just to finish that thought. Salmons is 9th, Hebert is 16th in the averages department at least. And Hebert will take a few more, leaving the 1, the 2, and the 5 on the deck. It's an 8 box for Bryan Hebert for 42 after 5. 4.5 game total of 407 for Bryan Hebert. 4.5 game total of 491 for Chris Salmons. Up in the total by 84. Bryan Hebert currently has the 5th game by 2, so we'll see where this takes us. Salmons down on lane 3. And Salmons almost with a pretty spare. But sometimes the best shots just don't go. The orange 7 pin is left on the deck. Salmons will take that out for a 10 for 50 after 6. So folks, since we are in the last half of the final game, I want to say a couple of special thanks to our ACST committee members, including our commissioner Danny Finn, our Class C treasurer Maurice Perry, stats and numbers crunched by Micah Imperato, the staff at Lakeside Lanes for always being awesome, and of course viewers like you. We always appreciate folks like you watching wherever, however. Thank you for your support always. 6 drop for Chris Salmons. Spare attempt is no good. He leaves the 7 on the deck. And also, folks, if you like what you saw and want to see more, I invite you to strike, comment, and subscribe to the multiverse of Candlepin the multiverse of candlepin content, such as the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour page on Facebook, the Candlepin Chat group on Facebook, Candlepin Bowling Network on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, Candlepin Corner on YouTube, at Candlepin Bowling on TikTok, Outrun the Bear on Facebook and Instagram, Alley Chat on YouTube, Wolfman12395 on YouTube for uploads of classic matches from yesteryear. The 7-boxer Chris Salmons. My apologies, I hit some button on here. I'll give you this view for now while I just figure out the scoreboard situation. I'll give you a verbal update. That's 67 after 8 for Chris Salmons. Not in the headpin that time. Follow-up shot is less good. He leaves the 10 on the deck. It's a 10-boxer Chris Salmons for 77 in the 9th. And Salmon's not on the headpin. That'll be a 10 box for Salmons. That'll put him at 87 after 10. 87 5-game total for Chris Salmons. Okay, sorry about that. I had a major visual glitch happen there. Anyways, Hebert's at 74 after 9. Now we can return to the main view here. Sorry about that. That was a fun exercise in figuring out what the heck just happened. Toggled full formula view as opposed to just, the human readable view. But Hebert struggles to finish the splits off here. That's a 4-6, 3-7, 10. And it looks like it's going to be a 5 for 79 to finish off the 5th game. So nice handshake there. So here's the end of the 5th game. So 79 after the 5th game for Bryan Hebert for a 5-game total of 444. And Chris Salmons with a 5-game total of 538 with that 87 game. And that should just about do it. Right. And so that will just about do it. So Chris Salmons will take 14 to Bryan Hebert 0. 538 to 544. Chris Salmons takes the 5th game by 94 and takes the 5th game by 8 and takes a total by 94. 2 strikes for Salmons, 1 strike for Hebert. 9 spares for Salmons, 3 spares for Hebert. 24 headpin shots for Chris Salmons and 15 headpin shots for Bryan Hebert. That's 48% for Chris Salmons and 30% for Bryan Hebert. And that should just about do it for us here at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. I want to thank you very much for watching. For Chris Salmons and Bryan Hebert, I've been Steve Kelly. And if you want to check anything else out, check out Candlepin Bowling Network on YouTube, Instagram. There's also at Candlepin Bowling on TikTok. There's at Candlepin Corner on YouTube, 3 Ball Spare on YouTube, the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour page on Facebook. Candlepin Chat on Facebook, Alley Chat on YouTube, and alleychat.net for their Friday night Pro League recaps. There's Wolfman12395 for classic Candlepin TV shows, the Candlepin Bowling channel as well, and a couple other things such as podcasts. If you're into podcasts, there's Ripping the Rack and The Approach. There's Tony Levesque on YouTube and TikTok. There's Charlie Collins on TikTok. Check out Candlepins for Cancer, candlepins4cancer.com. Sign up for qualifying roll-offs or to donate. It's for a great cause. And check out candlepin.org and click Go Bowling to find your nearest center. Anyways, I've been Steve Kelly, and for Chris Salmons and Bryan Hebert, it's been a pleasure broadcasting this to you, and we'll see you at the next Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. Have a great one, everybody.